Welcome to Curtis Goes Corner, coming to you from a secret underground base in occupied America. This definitely falls under, you've got to be kidding me. How could someone with so much political experience as Hillary Clinton, her husband was president of the United States, she was a U.S. senator from New York, the state I live in. I live upstate, not near New York City, thank God, even though it's starting to be like New York around here. How could somebody be so clueless and so self-unaware? Hillary Clinton blames women for 2016 election loss. They left me. Of course they did. Former Democratic presidential nominee said they left me because they couldn't take a risk on me because as a woman, I'm supposed to be perfect. Are you crazy? I know these people live in a bubble over time, like a lot of rich people do. Not all, but a lot. How could you possibly? They didn't vote for you. Women didn't vote for you because you were a woman. Unbelievable. Let's read on. Former Democratic presidential candidate and former Secretary of State and former U.S. Senator Hillary Clinton blamed women for her 2016 loss and suggested they couldn't vote for her because she was supposed to be perfect. Now, I'm not going to go into the fact she's incredibly unlikable. I'll say it right up front. I am a big Trump supporter, still am. And there's some parts of his personality that's unlikable. All right, I get it. So you shouldn't use your emotions and your feelings, which many women do when voting. She's just an unlikable person. You just go by her track record. And it's dismal at best. After then, FBI Director James Comey reopened an investigation on her email server. Before the election, Clinton said female voters were the ones who left her. They left me because they couldn't take a risk on me because as a woman, I'm supposed to be perfect. They were willing to take a risk on Trump, who had a long list of, let's call them flaws, to illustrate his imperfection because he was a man, and they could envision a man as president and commander-in-chief. It's not my fault, it's yours. It's your fault, women. It's incredible. How about it's your fault? You're the one that lost by small percentages throughout the Rust Belt and the swing states. You're the one that spent hundreds of millions of dollars in a presidential campaign only to lose, thinking the whole time we're just going through the motions, I'm going to get elected. Clinton discussed in her new book, The Fall of Roe, The Rise of a New America. That's all about abortion now. Abortion, 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 abortion. That's the only issue that Democrats have. They can't have an issue with the economy. They can't stand up for what they believe when it comes to illegal immigration. They can't stand up for their history of rights to the American people. We can go on and on and on. They can't stand up for how the economy's doing and how people are struggling to survive. They can't do any of those things. All they have left is abortion. During a recent interview with the Times, and also sounded the alarm on what she believed the second Trump administration would look like. Comey eventually did say he wouldn't recommend charges against Clinton. Of course they don't. We're not going to charge Joe Biden either because he's a well-meaning a senior elder who's just not all there mentally. I'm paraphrasing, of course. And they couldn't charge us against Clinton, but called her extremely careless. She told the media outlet that her warnings about abortion were ignored by a lot of the country. Oh, really? When you were a senator, did you call for a national law on abortion? No. Why? Because you thought Roe v. Wade, you could always blame the Supreme Court. When you're talking to a constituent or a prospective voter, you could say, wasn't me, it was the Supreme Court. I agree with you. Or with somebody that was an anti-abortion person or pro-life, you could say, well, that's the Supreme Court. I can't go over them. They're the supreme law of the land. You wanted it both ways. That's why you never put a bill in. to make abortion nationwide law. Not that I would agree with that, but that's besides the point. It's unbelievable. Too many women, particularly young women, do not understand the effort that went into creating the underlying theory of Roe v. Wade. It's flawed legislation. It's flawed decision, I should say. And that I slipped there and said legislation because that's what Democrats do. They use the judicial branch as an arm of the legislature. They always have. And the young woman on my campaign made a very compelling argument that making it safe and legal was the really goal. I kind of just pocketed the framework of Roe. What the hell does that even mean? You were too cowardly to put up a bill because you knew that the American people didn't want that. You thought Roe v. Wade would last forever. Frankly, I'm surprised it lasted as long as it did. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg, your hero, the ultimate progressive on the Supreme Court, said that decision was a flawed decision. Be careful. It's going to be overturned. And of course, because you like to use the legislature as judicial as the same branch, you said, yeah. Well, guess what? It's nothing to do with Trump. Oh, he appointed the people that overturned it. It was a crappy decision. As usual, you can't take the blame for anything. Clinton also accused Democrats of being too complacent of the understanding of the strength of the pro-life movement. Yeah, there's a pro-life movement, to be certain. Is it as powerful as the pro-abortion side? Absolutely not. Why? Because the Democrats have control of all the universities, been brainwashing our young people for decades. They have control of the high schools, the junior high schools, now called middle schools. They have control over almost all of the curriculum being taught in schools. They control it all. They control the media, 90% of it. They've had everything their way. So what is this about this huge pro-life movement that they just couldn't handle? It's nonsense. It's a lie. We didn't take it seriously, meaning the pro-life movement. We didn't understand the threat. Most Democrats, most Americans do not realize we are in an existential struggle for the future of this country. Abortion is not the existential struggle for the future of this country. You're making it out to be very similar to what happened pre-Civil War in the 1860s. That then slavery was the existential struggle for the future of this country. And you're making abortion the same level, height of what the American people morally want or don't want. And that's a lie. Enslaving millions of people is nowhere near the abortion issue. In fact, the court ruled, and I have a good friend of mine who's a really, really conservative person. His daughter is in her early 20s, and she thinks that the Supreme Court outlawed abortion. And he had to explain to her that no, all it did was put it back to the states where it should have been. It's amazing to me. Clinton argued that Democrats failed to pass legislation codifying abortion rights into federal law, even when they controlled the Senate, which you were a part of, because they could not fathom that abortion rights would ever be at risk. It was, you think that the Supreme Court is just another arm of the legislature. You've always thought that. All Democrats have. So you did nothing. Anybody that's really, really hyped up on pro-abortion and the right of a woman, even up till birth, which is horrendous and horrible, thinks that you really tried. Well, you didn't. You did nothing when you're a U.S. Senator. I can't ever heard of a piece of legislation that you submitted for a vote to the U.S. Senate that made federal abortion rights the law of the land, not a U.S. Supreme Court decision. All you did was wah, bah, 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 like the adults in Charlie Brown. Wah, 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 wah. You Democrats had plenty of time. You've controlled the House, the Senate, and the presidency multiple times since Roe v. Wade. And yet they never, ever had a piece of legislation that codified a woman's right to choose, as they call it. It's amazing to me. The right is relentless. Talk about deflection. You know, they take a loss, they get back up, they regroup, they raise more money. It's tremendously impressive the way they operate. And we have nothing like it on our side. It's just amazing to me. You morons, I believe it was in the South somewhere, the decision when Roe v. Wade was overturned. Someone was denied an abortion, I think, after a certain number of weeks, and so they sued and it went through the court system and ended up in the Supreme Court, where Roe v. Wade was overturned. And who initiated all those legal battles to get to the Supreme Court? You and your progressive friends. And you got bit in the butt. It finally got overturned. I'm 67 years old. I think I was in 10th grade in high school when Roe v. Wade was put as a Supreme Court decision. It's not your fault. It's somebody else's fault. It's somebody else's fault that you lost to Trump in 2016. It's Comey's fault because he exposed the fact that I was incredibly careless at best with national security items in a server that was stuck in a closet by her bathroom or something. And then how many hundreds of BlackBerries were destroyed with evidence, and yet he was never charged and never anybody on her campaign. She bankrolled the Russian collusion hoax, and yet no one was charged. It's always somebody else's fault. It's easy. You were a wife of a president, two-term president. You were a U.S. senator. You were Secretary of State. And all those things, especially Secretary of State, some horrible things happened with it for this country. And yet somehow, some way through all of that, and enriched yourself hundreds of millions of dollars in the process, somehow, some way, you're the victim. It's amazing to me. It truly, truly is. And there's rumors that Hillary Clinton might be the Democratic candidate. And all these suburban women are going to have to make a choice if she is. It's just amazing to me. So she just called out all the people that she'll need if she runs again for president to win. This is just as bad, a different version of the basket of deplorables. Someone does not agree with me is automatically wrong and evil. And that's the way the Democrats have always operated. I was a Democrat most of my life as a local elected official on the local city council for 8 years. But I was an old school Democrat. I was a Democrat when they cared about things like the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, and other things. John Kennedy belonged to the NRA. I called myself a John Kennedy Democrat, even though on some things he went a little left. That was a Democratic Party of old. The Democrat Party now is a disaster. The small percent, 10, 12% of the Democrats that are progressives have taken the party and they have taken it over. And the other 80, 85% of the Democrats just went along with it. The Overton window has gone so far left, it's incredible. They consider people like Barack Obama now to be a moderate. Your party has been taken over. It's been hijacked. And somehow, some way, it's not your fault. Amazing to me. Before I continue on and say something that I'll probably regret and have this channel pushed down even farther in the algorithm than it already is, I'll leave it here. But Hillary Clinton, that's your fault again. Makes me sigh. Until the next time, God bless, goodbye, and good luck.